Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are here with panel number 7, Strategies for Self-Care and Managing Intense Emotions with BPD. We are so delighted that you could join us today. My name is Sara Rosenberg, and I will be moderating the panel as a volunteer for Emotions Matter. While I'm doing the introductions, we invite you to write in the chat where you are joining us from today. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, everybody. And before we begin, if you have not done so already, please consider making a gift to fund Emotions Matter peer programs throughout the year. Now, Emotions Matter is a 501c3 nonprofit organization funded in 2015 to support, educate, and advocate for those impacted by borderline personality disorder. To learn more about us and our programs, go to the website www.emotionsmatterbpd.org or head to the expo. Emotions Matter philosophy. Emotions Matter strives to create a safe, judgment-free space for people with borderline personality disorder. We accept that there's a spectrum of experiences within the BPD community. We honor where people are on the journey without judgment or assumptions. We encourage people to define their own path toward recovery. We speak as experts of our own lived experience, not as medical experts. Guidelines. Use respectful language in the session chat. Any inappropriate messaging, including harassment, bullying, or monopolizing the chat, will be deleted. We accept difference and promote acceptance, especially with regard to gender, identity, race, ethnicity, age, religion, disability, or politics. Avoid explicit expressions of self-harm or trauma, which may be upsetting to others. The panels and plenary sessions will be recorded and available after the conference, so please no screenshots or recording on personal devices. Now, important for you guys to remember, questions during the session should be asked using the Q&A tab, not the chat. We will be monitoring the Q&A more than the chat because we probably won't be able to handle it, which is a good thing, right? Now, just some safety guidelines and disclaimer. If at any time during BPD Fest 2021 you find yourself overwhelmed, struggling, or for any reason in need of support, we encourage you to reach out to your support system. Audience members may experience intense and painful emotions, feelings, memories, thoughts, and/or reactions to content shared. Participate at your own risk. You're also welcome to take a break from BPD Fest 2021 at entirely. In the event of a medical, including mental health emergency, please seek emergency care through a doctor, hospital, or emergency call number like 911 in the United States. And I would like to introduce our wonderful speakers today. So firstly, we have Maria Solomon. Maria, LCSW, is a senior clinical social worker at New York Presbyterian Hospital Payne Whitney Day Treatment Program. She has expertise in diagnosis, assessment, and treatment of borderline personality disorder and is trained in dialectical behavioral therapy. She also practices as a private psychotherapist and is active in community organizations that support borderline personality disorder. Maria Cesaro. Maria has lived her entire life with mental illness and has learned to overcome it. As of now, it doesn't define who she is, nor does she continue to label herself. She is proud to currently be in recovery, and her mission is to share her experience, strength, and hope with others. Rivka Lubin. Rivka has been a part of Emotions Matter since its inception in 2015. She was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder in 2010, and over the years has worked towards a life worth living. She has a BA in psychology and an MS Ed in childhood education. Rivka is passionate about advocacy work and has a blog where she documents her journey, reaching over 5,000 people. And Rachel Hay. Rachel is an Emotions Matter peer facilitator from Texas. She enjoys spending time with family and friends, playing her ukulele, growing indoor plants, traveling, and helping others who struggle with anxiety, depression, and BPD. Guys, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sara. So I've got the questions that I'll ask our panelists. And we'll start with the first one. And the question is, tell us a little bit about your journey with BPD, when you were diagnosed, and how long you have been managing your symptoms. So Maria Cesaro, if you want to go first.
Sure. So I got diagnosed with BPD at the age of 18. Prior to that, I have been diagnosed with several other things. Part of my journey has been addiction is a part of my story as well. So I've spent the last 5.5 years getting sober. And so that has really catapulted my recovery. And it's really, going through DBT twice, going to AA, going to therapy. The 3D approach has really helped me to become a person that I'm very proud of today.
Thank you so much. Rivka, you want to go next?
Sure. I was diagnosed with BPD in 2010. I was 16, and I know there's some talk about, not diagnosing till you're 18, but the diagnosis really did save my life, essentially. Over the years, I feel like everything has been so up and down. I don't, even now, it's still so up and down. I've had so many clinicians say they couldn't work with me because they heard the words borderline personality disorder. They didn't even meet me. I've had, friends say that I was too much for them, and it became such a thing. But I think what is, I guess, driving me right now to get better is that I know that it's possible, and I know that I am not the only one who's dealing with this, and there's power in numbers. This is such a amazing community, and it has really helped me get to where I am today.
Thank you so much. And for me, I was diagnosed in 2013. I've had symptoms of BPD such as extreme sensitivity and intense feelings of shame and guilt. I've had those my whole life. I managed these as best as I could. I would talk to my family. Sometimes it would just be crying jags, where I would just cry for a long time. And after my diagnosis, I did specialized treatment. I did dialectical behavioral therapy, which really helped. And I began medication, which also really helped. Maria Solomon, when did you start working with people with BPD?
A long time ago. I've been working with people with BPD 20 plus years ago. And what I'd like to also point out is I started out in a more psychodynamic traditional setting, which was when I started my career, which was one perspective of BPD. And then when I came to Payne Whitney and Presbyterian, was trained in DBT, and then was part of a research study in something else. So I have been working with people with BPD for many, many years, and then also became involved in the Family Connection Program, which is super vital and valuable and free. And I also, my perspective, my approach, not just to working with people with BPD, but in general, is I do value being somewhat eclectic and knowing what works for people at a certain point in treatment, and then they might need to move on to a different treatment. And I've seen that work very well. I think one always needs to know, why are you doing this approach versus this now? Different treatments have different strengths. I'm not a believer in that it's one size fits everyone.
I just want to say something. Maria, I've known you for a bunch of years now because of Emotions Matter, and I feel like I've told you this multiple times, but I'm going to say it again. I really respect you, that you are, not just willing, but passionate about helping people with borderline personality disorder. Because like I said, I've been rejected by doctors before, and it just, every time I talk to you, it just, I see that you care so much, and I just want to say thank you for that before we even start. hard.
Thank you so much. I'm getting a little, as we say.
It's okay. So am I.
That's okay. Emotions are what we do. Yeah.
They matter.
Thank you.
Yeah, they matter. Perfect. Okay, our second question is, BPD affects people differently. Can you describe how BPD has affected your emotions and what this has kind of looked like for you over the years? So, Maria Cesaro? Oh, I think you're muted.
When I first got, but prior to getting diagnosed with BPD, my emotions would look like I would feel like kind of okay the 1 minute. And then after that, it would feel like I got hit by a truck of emotions and I couldn't separate out what I was feeling. I couldn't, like, you know, it when I went away to college, it really got really bad because the emotions were so intense that I couldn't, like, I felt like my body was on fire, you know, and I didn't know what to do. I was so overwhelmed. And so, you know, once I got to DBT, you know, I started to understand, okay, the tools that they gave me to help me separate what my emotions look like, because what I was using to cope with my emotions was like food, alcohol, drugs, like it just, because I didn't know what else to do. I had no tools, you know? And going to DBT, I was around other people that were going through similar struggles, and I was like a light went on for the first time. And, you know, my emotions over the years have become less intense, but I've also done a lot of therapy and a lot of DBT to help me be able to use the tools that I need to, like, if I start to feel like I get hit by a truck now, I know that there's a Macy's by my house. Like, I'll walk around the perfume section because I love scents. I don't know if you're weird to some people, but it really helps me feel better. I'll go to a floral shop. You know, so I'm much more aware of when it's going to hit. And if it is hitting, that's what I could say. Awareness has really, over the years, has grown, even though the emotions have decreased a bit, but it's still there. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that you have a place that you can go to, kind of a safe place to go to. That's really beautiful. Rivka?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that you said you feel like you're on fire, because something that I wrote down that I wanted to talk about is, you know, they say that people with borderline are like an emotional burn victim. You know, one touch can send you crumbling. And I'm very into metaphors, and I always think they're very good ways to explain things, especially when they're so hard to describe. You know, there's always this fight in my head between like what I know logically and what I feel. I always say that there's a difference between what I know and what I feel, because I'm, you know, an intelligent person. I'll know certain things are ineffective or unhealthy, but knowing it is not all there is to it. And I feel like in terms of how it's affected just, you know, everything, I feel like a lot of it can be inside my head. You know, I don't really like to let on, like, to people around me that something's happening, because in the past I feel like I've been put down for that. So I kind of like internalize it, and I could be in a situation not okay in the slightest, but, you know, no one would know. I'm a very outgoing person. I'm a funny person. And I just, you know, over the years, I think this year in particular, which is strange because it's been a global pandemic, but this year was actually very good to me in a way. You know, I lost my job last March, and that was terrible, but I finally had time to focus on me, which I never had before. You know, I've been working on myself in so many ways, and I know that now, you know, I'm not fixed. There's no fixed, but I am worlds away from where I've been, and I think it's, you know, I'm aware of that, which is rare. So I don't even know if that answered the question, but there you go.
No, it did. And I'm looking in the chat too, and people are really resonating with what you said, the difference between what you know and what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So different. So my answer to this is, kind of similar to what I already talked about. I've struggled a lot with being super sensitive to things that were said and like tones that were used. So Rivka, when you use the example of like an emotional burn victim, I actually hadn't heard that before, but that really resonated with me. And just that extreme sensitivity. I talked about crying jags. I mean, I do remember these a lot, just crying and crying and crying because I was so overwhelmed, feeling a lot of shame and guilt that I wasn't doing enough or good enough, you know, in school, even making A's, it wasn't enough, it wasn't good enough. And Rivka, what you said too, like, I came off as really competent. Like outwardly, you would look at me and be like, "Oh yeah, she looks fine. Like she's happy, she's smiling, she's engaged."
Right.
But inside, I was like crumbling. You know, I was just like falling apart. And the other night, actually, I was just having an anxious moment, and I couldn't calm down. And I just had this image of like, have you guys seen the movie Inside Out? With the little emotions, you know, the anger where he's got like his head on fire. And I was like, that's me. I'm just like running around with my head on fire. I just can't grasp a thought, you know, I was just all over the place. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of one of my, which we'll get to that, but kind of one of my coping strategies is like coming up with images that express how I'm feeling, because
Right.
then I feel like I can explain it to someone. So anyway, Maria Solomon, do you have anything to add to that? I know it's kind of an experience question, but do you have anything to add?
Well, I'm going to add that from where I sit, it's a very different kind, but equally a very emotional experience. And I've noticed distinct differences between what my emotional experiences are when I'm working with people with BPD versus others. I ride different waves, and I do need to often kind of harness myself similarly. And yeah, I think that's.
Can I just say before we move on to the next one, when you said you were running around with your head on fire,
Yeah.
I remember I have an interesting memory. I'll remember very specific things and certain dates that are important, even if they're 10 years ago and stuff like that. And I remember this very specific moment where the school psychologist had told my mother that she wanted me to get evaluated for whatever. And I remember I was talking to this psychiatrist, and this was before I was diagnosed, before anything. And, I was trying to explain everything that was going on in my head. And I remember, what was I, 15? I just went, I don't know what to do with any of it. And I just remember that perfectly right now, saying like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with any of it. And it's just, oh boy, emotional. But it's just so interesting and, validating to hear that from other people also. And especially like, this was years ago, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with any of it. And obviously I still feel like that a lot now, but very different than when I was in 10th grade. I don't know, that came into my brain right now. I don't know, just thought I'd mention that.
Can I jump in with one other comment? Is that okay? One thing, a comment that I want to make, and I think it does fit in here somehow. Obviously, one of the hallmarks we all know about BPD is the intense emotion. Part of it's biological, the reactivity. One of the things that's been very interesting to me is that many patients of mine, with all of this emotional system and everything with BPD, are more than anyone else attuned to and will respond to and pick up on other people. So there's this incredible, I don't want to say sensitivity in the wrong way, but there's an emotional attunement, I think is a better word. And sometimes patients have come into my office and said, you don't seem to say something's different. We'll have picked up on something that actually, so it works both ways. It's not just their reactivity to the world that can lead to all of these things, but it has also the great strength of being incredibly tuned into people. And I think that's a great strength that can get underrated, because there's all the stuff about, oh, people with BPD, high reactivity, that there's also great strength. And when all the other stuff gets more regulated, that's something that is of great value, and it's a great asset. I wanted to say that.
Thank you for saying that. Maria, Cesaro, did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I wanted to add something. I remember I was in the car with my family, 3 sisters, a lot of noise, a lot of overload, just like extreme sensitivity. And I remember like telling my mom to pull over the car on the highway, because then I'm ready to jump out of this car right now, because I said like the sensory overload like was too much for me. Even like, I don't go to concerts, I don't go to crowded places. Like it's because I'm so sensitive. Like I feel like I have a sixth sense where I can tune into other people's emotions, because I've gotten so good at tuning into my own. But I also am like extremely sensitive to things. And like I have darkening shades in my room. I have like certain lavender, I forgot what those called, the humidifier or I forgot what it's called.
Diffuser, yeah.
The diffuser. Because it helps to create a very like safe environment for me at home. And that's really important for me, to have a sanctuary where I can come home and decompress and be as sensitive as I want it to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just that.
I love this sharing, like this back and forth sharing, and I'm also reading the chat too. And there's a lot of people who are relating to this and relating to specifics. So it's perfect. I want to kind of combine question 3 and 4. Rivka and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. So question 3 is like, what has helped you cope when emotions are intense or overwhelming? So kind of like the emotion regulation skills that we've learned. And then question 4 is a little more like, what are your maybe top 3, top 4, like self-care things that have worked for you? So just kind of sharing some skills that you've learned that have helped you regulate. Maria, you want to go first, or you want to think about it for a minute?
No, I can go. That's fine. Okay, so the skills that have really helped me with my intense emotion is like participation, or like also what's the word? Participation, comparisons, also like helping others, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, using those accept skills, and then also using your 5 senses. I think it's the tips, if I'm reading correctly.
I think it is.
I did, right? The tip skills where it's like
temperature, intense exercise, progressive muscle relaxation.
There we go. Thank you. I was totally had a brain freeze.
It's okay.
So those, but my top self-care things that I do are like writing for me has been a really big outlet, like journaling. A lot of the poetry that I've written has been about my experience with mental health, and it's been like an outlet. Like I go back and look at it and I'm like, wow, like the depth to which, you know, I write during that times is great. I also go to AA meetings. That's also really helpful because I get to hear about other people's pain. It gives me a lot of perspective. And I think also I had family therapy with my family. That was really helpful. So just also going to therapy consistently, taking my medication as prescribed, writing, attending like poetry workshops that I really like. I think for me, those were like, and going to the gym are really important self-care stuff for me that I do.
Yeah, that's perfect. A lot of those are similar to mine. So that's
okay. Yeah. I think your answers then.
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I'm a big writer. You know, as Sarah said at the beginning, I have a blog, and I started this blog literally in 2011. I just got an email saying that my blog turned 10. And I was like, oh my God, because it was May of 2011. And I started it for me because I just wanted to write things, but I kind of over the last 10 years, I guess, somehow have a following. And, you know, I feel like by me writing about, sometimes it's just like, I'm tired, send help. But it's always also like just my everyday. And I feel like some people have messaged me either anonymously or not anonymously, like saying how I've helped them, or a certain post of mine came at just the right time for them to read, or, you know, all these things. And that gives me a sense of purpose of, by me telling my story, it's reaching someone else. That's I'm very vocal about this. I post a lot on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm like, if I'm not who I am, then what's the point? I'm like, I'm not gonna hide who I am. This is me. If you don't like it, take it or leave it. You know. And I've kind of gotten that confidence this year. It's strange, but you know, also in terms of self-care, physical and mental health go hand in hand. And you know, right before the pandemic hit, my physical health was really bad, and it had a big impact on my mental health. It was like, does my whole body hurt because I'm depressed, or am I depressed because I'm in so much agony every day? I was just not doing well, and I kind of was like, I can't keep living like this. So I kind of just went all in on myself, and I was like, you need to get your crap together, Rivka, or else this is not going to end well. You know, and my whole, in terms of my physical health and everything, has improved a lot. And I'm very on top of that. You have to be on top of my sleep. I give myself a very strict bedtime. People think I'm ridiculous. You know, all these little things that you don't even think of. You said with like lavender, I am a big like aroma therapy person. I love scents like that. I have the candles. I have a lavender scented weighted stuffed animal, and I am not afraid to say it. And like, you know, all of these things that maybe seem so like corny and cliche are so real and are so helpful, and like easier said than done. 100%. It's taken me more than 10 years to get to a place where I can get myself out of this kind of emotionally heightened situation. So easier said than done, but it can be done. I guess that's what I want to say.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I love that you guys brought up writing, because I didn't even put that down as something that I use as a skill, but I write too. I write a lot. It helps to get the thoughts from here onto paper, and they often make more sense when they're outside of my mind. So I wrote down like some of the things I do. What I'm doing right now, I sit on the ground for like literal grounding. So I knew I would be anxious about this panel, so I chose to like sit on the floor in my room. I've got plants behind me. I really enjoy watering my plants and taking care of them. I'm really strict and specific with my bedtime. Like I go to bed to get enough sleep. I'm really consistent with my medication that I am on, because I have missed doses in the past and it just completely throws off everything. Some of the like DBT skills that I use are also like tips. I use ice often, or even just holding it or putting it like right here under my eyes to help me like immediately calm down. I've got like putty that I use, my anxiety putty, when I'm like feeling overwhelmed. I always keep water with me. I see us all kind of sipping on a drink. It just like helps.
I don't know why. My emotional support water bottle.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I always have water with me. It just really helps for some reason. I've got a diffuser too. And one of the skills that I needed a refresher on, that being really consistent with counseling, therapy, and doctor's appointments, making sure I keep those. One of the things my therapist reminded me that I need to come back to is radical acceptance. accepting what is and letting go of what isn't. So hard. So hard, but I really needed that reminder recently. And probably something that I'm trying to do, especially during the pandemic, is like making an intentional effort to do something with a friend, whether that's a FaceTime call, whether that's like a picnic at the park, or, you know, whatever's safe and whatever we feel comfortable with, but like intentionally going out of my comfort zone. My comfort zone is here, just staying home. But trying to go out of my comfort zone and doing something with someone else. And of course, my family has been huge, very supportive. I've been really blessed. My mom and dad are actually listening today, so I'm so grateful to have them here, and just feel like being able to talk to them about what I'm experiencing and what's going on in my mind and my brain, even if they don't understand, coming up with those metaphors and trying to explain it is really helpful. Maria Solomon, you're going to kind of touch on the differences between like emotion regulation skills and self-care?
Yes. So a few comments that I want to make in terms of self-care. One of the best, I've come to think of these as really very foundational skills, and I think there's several categories. The emotion regulation skills, which are a combination of tolerating and also changing emotions, and creating a foundation that will help us, particularly when we talk about somebody in a BPD kind of brain and emotional experiential kind of thing, knowing that emotions are the buttons that can get pushed very dramatically, is if there's this foundation of self-care, the please skills are what I call like the first floor. That's the first floor. And the please skills stand for, of course, everything is an acronym, right? PL is treating physical illness as you're pointing to. The brain and the emotions and body all live in the same body. And if one is completely out of whack, of course, it's going to interact with the other. So taking care of medical conditions, regular checkups, whatever conditions there are, taking the medications related to that, absolutely. E stands for balanced eating. We certainly know that different, and also food can serve many purposes. We know that we need it, but we know that it can be a way of coping with emotions. It can be a way of dealing with self-view. Eating disorders are very common among people with BPD, so a relationship with food is very complicated, but also trying to avoid foods that might spike moods. Going for long periods of time without eating, we know is going to affect brain cognition, ability to think. And for people with BPD whose systems are in different parts of the brain work so that more likely towards impulsivity, you want to be able to have your brain, your body, your emotions nourished and optimized so that you can do all those things. What is A? I hope I'm remembering this. Avoiding mood altering, drugs, that means too much caffeine, alcohol, all of those. S, balance sleep. Sleep, the brain needs it. Everybody knows probably that when you're sleep deprived, your emotional responses, your cognitive responses, your behaviors are just going to get really amped up, or you're going to be much more vulnerable. And the last E stands for exercise, which is another, I always say exercise, think of it as X milligrams of whatever. So those are the foundational skills that I see as sort of trying to sort of keep yourselves in the most emotionally sturdy situation. That said, life happens, things happen, but if they happen on a sturdier system, you're more able to access those skills. Then I think there's a set of coping skills and distress tolerance skills and emotion regulation that are more in an episodic way when situations come up. what do you need to do? What are the distress tolerance skills that you need to use to bring yourself down so that you can problem solve if there's a situation that has to be handled and you don't want to respond, and it wouldn't be effective to, impulsively. So what are those? One misperception of these skills is often going to distress tolerance to put the distraction skills as avoidance. If something needs to be handled, you need to handle it. You might need to do a real quick distress tolerance so that you can get yourself, so that you can access your brain and your thinking and make wise mind decisions. But it's not about avoiding. So it's really important to understand what they are. Can I share some of myself, Sue?
Yeah.
I'm going to join the crowd here. So, when things hit me and I need to access it, I've got my go-to Grace and Frankie, various Netflix shows, old movies I love, just takes me into another zone and place, and all those big rooms from the 1940s. Walking, dogs will do it, and I'll just go up to any dogs in the street, and listening to and dancing to 1960s, 70s, and 80s music. Getting up in my living room and dancing to it.
No shame.
No shame.
Yeah.
No.
I love that.
You know what? Can I say something? Something I also have. I sing. I'm a singer. I'm a musical person. I've been singing my whole life, and this sounds like wild, but singing for me can actually get me out of a hole. My therapist, bless her soul, knows that. And, a lot of times when we meet, virtually, I can get very stuck during the conversation because it gets very intense, and I can be like in my own mind and not able to express what I need to. And then it'll be silent, and she'll be like, "You want to sing a song?" And I'm like, maybe. And I literally get the instrumental on YouTube, and I put on a show. And the funny part is that afterwards, like, I am I'm out of my head, and she even said to me, she's known me for 100 years, but she even said to me, like, when you sing, like, you come alive. Like, I'm very into Broadway, and I could be like literally dissociating. And then I'm like, let me sing this jam from Mean Girls. And I am literally acting and performing. And it brings me to a place where I can deal with things. So that's something that really, really helps me. And it's like, not just a hobby, it saves me, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love everything that's been shared. I'm mindful of the time, and I already see some questions popping up. So I just want to thank everyone for sharing, for giving those skills. And Sarah, you want to run our Q&A for us?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. That was so important. You gave tips. I was blown away. And that you guys can be so open about how you feel. It's really nice because, I feel the same way, and I'm sure most people here feel it too. So it's nice to be part of that community. So we do have some questions. I'm going to go through them. The first question here is, any advice for your family members who are trying to support their loved one with BPD who is not yet ready or willing to get treatment? Were any of you ever at that point? And if yes, was there anything that a family member did that made you feel supported?
Well, I want to say, I'm speaking hypothetically now because I know what I would have wanted. I think everyone comes to terms with things at their own pace and at their own rate. And I think the most important part of borderline is knowing that someone is there, even if you're not going to access that resource right now, because there's a lot of times when we're like, go away from me, you know, I want to be left alone. I think just having someone or people saying like, you know, we are here, we're not, you know, we're not going anywhere, and if you decide you need this, this is what we're going to do. And like for me, I don't really have that. So I think that that's what I, you know, in a perfect world would have wanted. And I don't know if that really answers the question but you know, sometimes you just need to know that there is someone. Yeah.
Thank you. I agree with everything you're saying. For myself personally, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For myself personally, I didn't admit to it for many years, and my family knew that something was wrong, and they just loved me and supported me no matter what for years and years. And now I wish that I would have listened to them earlier and gotten treatment, but I didn't. And at the end of the day, I knew that they loved me, and when I was ready, their love was there and obvious, and it was just the most amazing support. So if they don't listen, they don't listen, but you got to just love, love, love all the time.
Right.
Anybody else has anything to add on that? Maria?
I didn't want to go to treatment. Like, I wanted nothing to do with treatment. I'm running 5 and I'm running this way, you're going that way. And I think for me, the biggest thing was my parents did a lot of learning about BPD before I actually, like, they kept just educating themselves and searching for answers and loving me from where I was. You know, they loved me before I learned how to love myself. And I think that was really, you know, just them doing their own learning, them taking the initiative to try to figure out, to support me in whatever way they could, while I was still in a place where I was like, not going to happen, you know, and eventually I did. And, you know, I think also love can also be around boundaries too, right? And my parents, you know, set boundaries with me, and it also improved our relationship. And it really impacted me, and I went to treatment. So
Thank you. Should we move on to the next question, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the question here is, I've noticed most support groups for BPD are for family, friends, partners, and not for those who actually have the diagnosis. Are there online support groups, or would the only group setting essentially be in?
I feel like this is a Rachel question.
If I understood the question correctly, which I read it twice, Support Group Central, right? BPD peer groups. We have on Support Group Central, I'm one of the peer facilitators for a BPD group for people with lived experience. So you can sign up on Support Group Central. And yeah, I think DBT is great. Like, it, you know, if you can get in there, it's really great. But also Support Group Central, it's free. And we're having like 3 to 4 meetings a month, and we're adding more facilitators all the time. So it's growing. So yeah.
Emotions Matter has some great support groups. You got to check it out. Like on our website, there's all kinds of different programs. Sometimes they're not specifically support groups, but they're groups where you can be there with other people who have the same feelings as you, and you can resonate with them. You feel validated. So that's super, I mean, that's amazing for me to be involved in. I love it. Anybody else? Anything to add? No. Okay. Next question is pretty simple. Can you share the please in writing again? The PLEA.
Oh, I could type it out. Do you want me
Yeah,
to
can
do
you put that in the
Yeah,
chat?
put it in the chat if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that now.
Okay. I don't have any other questions here.
What's the L?
So I'm going to look through the chat. And anybody, feel free to ask some questions.
Rivka,
I know I said before that I won't be able to handle it, but I will.
the PL is treat physical illness.
Oh, physical illness is the L.
PL together means treat physical illness.
Oh, got it.
It's full, and then the EASC. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
I see Loretta loved the quote, "They loved me before I could love myself." It really was. That was
That's
awesome.
my mom.
What?
That's my mom. And she did that. She loved me before I realized that I was worth loving, you know? And so, yeah.
Absolutely. It's so true. I mean, it's so hard to realize it when you're in it and you're feeling bad about yourself, but later on you can realize a lot of things that you wish you would have realized in the moment. But yeah, it's hard to love yourself with BPD, and you have to learn that from, getting the love from other people. Absolutely.
and I thought one of our questions was like, what message would you want to give to others who are struggling? I just want to say, I used to think that there was this timeline and there was this finish line, and I had this amount of time to get to where I should be. And I always got frustrated when it wasn't happening. And I always got frustrated, like, it's been so many years. What the hell is still wrong with me? Why can't I deal with this? Why can't I do this? And I think the fact that I put such pressure on myself stopped me from getting where I wanted to be. And I feel like a lot of times I didn't even know what I wanted to be. I don't know what my end goal was. I'm like, I have no idea. I'm doing all this work, but what do I eventually want? And I think once I think my message to other people is like, don't put that pressure on yourself. And I know it's, again, easier said than done. For like years, I was like, this is ridiculous. It's taking too long. And even now, during this last year where I have made very big improvements in my life in many ways, sometimes I'm like, when I have one of those moments, I'll be like, really, Rivka? Really? It's me, But I think the most important part and the most important thing to tell yourself is that it will happen. And nothing's ever going to be perfect. I always say I'm an elementary school teacher, and, people love saying practice makes perfect. I'm like, no, practice makes progress, or practice makes better, because no one's perfect. And I just, practice makes progress, and progress is so crucial, even if you're not 100% where you need to be. It's like you can go up. Sometimes I feel like I'm going up 10 stairs and then falling back down 5. And I'm like, well, what? But I'm still 5 steps from where I was, me and my metaphors, like, it's so important to recognize what you have done and what you can do and what you will do, because that's what's going to get you somewhere. And, honestly, for me to say this is a huge deal, because I never would say this in the past. And yeah, that's my story.
I can definitely relate to Rivka. Like, I think because I got diagnosed so late, because I have 3 sisters, and I think growing up, they got to experience a lot of things that I didn't do. So I was on a different timeline than they were. My journey was different than theirs. And I definitely put this pressure on myself to, like, why am I not here? And why haven't I been able to do this? And, why have I struggled so much? Why have I suffered? And I think for me, all the emotional work that I did on myself to become self-aware, to be able to manage my emotions, it's interesting now is I'm so grateful for the experience, because I can now be a support to my family or to other members, right? So I would say, like, to thine own self be true. And, it is very difficult. It is very hard, but you also can get through it. You can. I feel like we're ever meet our darkness that people haven't. So that's what I would say. Rivka's like,
Yeah.
Chance, right?
Yeah.
We have another few questions. So we have, do you have any suggestions for people who don't have blood family that we can depend on? That's a big trigger and sadness for me personally.
Family is not necessarily only the people you live with, and it's not necessarily only the people you're directly related to. I strongly believe that. And, when I came and, had the honor of getting to know everyone before Emotions Matter was even an organization, I learned that family doesn't have to be related to you. Obviously they are also, but family are the people who are going to support you and surround you with support and validation. And I think if you can find that goes a really, really long way.
Yeah, I tried to type an answer, but I couldn't get it and it wasn't fast enough. So now it's gone. But I basically said what Rivka said, because we had a speaker yesterday on a panel that I was on, and she said, like, sometimes family is what you're born into, and sometimes family is who you choose to support you. And as painful as that is, that a lot of family norms are blood, please realize that you can choose your family. You can choose who you want to be there for you. And I think it's a process. It's got to be a process of getting over that idea that family has to be blood. But family I consider so many of my friends more than friends. They are my family. They are who I turn to when I'm in a crisis or when I need help. So that's what I typed. I don't know where it went. Into the universe. Someone's getting this random answer. They're like, oh, it's just what I needed.
And Rachel, I think this is for you, this question. Could you please share the link to Support Group Central?
Yeah, I have opened another tab and I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
We do have another question here. Do any of you have middle school and high school kids in your family, and how they reacted to your BPD and your sometimes or most of the time unhealthy relationships with them? Go ahead.
You're mute again.
Sorry. Are they talking about siblings, or are they talking about just in general?
In your family is what the question says. Like anybody.
Yeah, I could say that, like, well, as I was growing up, I'm not, there's 9 years between my sister and my youngest one. There's 9 years between us. And she was in high school around the time that she was like in middle school, high school around the time I got diagnosed. And she witnessed a lot of my recovery, but she also witnessed a lot of sadness as well. And it's interesting is that, as I've done more work in recovery, my relationship with her has shifted, and we're a lot closer now. And she actually had a conversation with me a couple of weeks ago and was like, watching you recover has, she's so passionate about mental health now. She wants to know about everything I'm doing, and it's like a big thing for my family, like everyone's been influenced and impacted by it. So yeah, that's what I can say.
Thank you. She just added in, like, she means like kids, children.
Okay. No.
Any?
I don't have.
Yeah, I don't have any children, so I don't have experience.
I don't either.
Come to me in 15 years and then we'll have a conversation.
All right. Let's see what's going on in the chat.
Can I add a comment?
Of course.
Because something is coming through here about, well, family isn't chosen, et cetera. But I just do want to reinforce and validate this comment that, yes, family can come and be created in different ways beyond the biological. It can be very challenging to accept and acknowledge and sometimes separate from biological family or redefine it or whatever, because biological family can go with, as this person says, so many things, experiences, values, culture. So it's a big hurdle. I'm just recognizing that.
Yeah, I saw that in the chat too, and I wanted to validate that because I feel like I didn't do a good job when I was answering. But it's painful to have to acknowledge or to need to acknowledge maybe that family isn't blood, and take your time with that process. That may, for some people it may look like a couple days, a couple months where they can move to acceptance, but it could take years also. And something that my counselor keeps reminding me of is like, radical acceptance is a skill that we never quite master because there is always something that comes up in our lives that we have to go, oh my gosh, I have to accept this again. I have to accept this again. So I hope I didn't invalidate anyone when I said you can choose your family. That was not my intent. So yeah, especially when it's a big part of your culture and you long for that, it's very painful. And you're allowed and should sit with those emotions and feel it. Like that's valid.
And it might mean accepting certain limitations, certain things that can't happen and other things that can. This also came up in one of yesterday's panels, which I think was very helpful, that it's not all or nothing. Sometimes it might have to be, though. I mean, obviously there are many different scenarios.
Thank you. We have another question here. How can I involve my family in my recovery when there's a cultural barrier? Anytime I try, even with my sisters who are 4 and 8 years older than I am, it feels as if I am trying to use my mental illness as an excuse. Anything anybody wants to add on that? Who's that already what we discussed?
It's really hard. I don't have any personal experience with this, so I just want to validate that this is really sad and really hard. And from my perspective of having mental health, you're not using it as an excuse. It's a fact in your life, and I just am sorry that they can't see that. And my hope for you is that they can see that someday, that it's a fact and part of your life.
All right, that was some really great information right there. Anybody else have any questions? Do we see anything else in the chat, guys?
People are just responding to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the validation in the comments. That's really so encouraging. Really just such a safe space to share.
Awesome.
Emotions Matter is like a family, by the way, if you want to get involved. I'm not joking.
A million %. I mean, I've been, pouring my heart and soul into Emotions Matter, especially this conference, and it's absolutely the most validating thing in the entire world. There's nothing that's more important to me. It gives me, I just can't believe that I'm able to do this, and it's just the best feeling. So you guys definitely get involved if you're not already involved, and thank you to all the volunteers that have been, so involved. And I mean, we had over 45 speakers with lived experience. It's just been incredible. And now our time is almost up. So the panel, thank you to the attendees. And I just really want to remind you to donate. We really are trying to raise money to reach our goal of $10,000 by tonight. And we can't do this without you. We want to be able to fund all the programs coming up in the future. And we also have an amazing auction, and we have some really great items. You should definitely check it out and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.